I moved here and really didn't know anyone.
I wanted to get started on my career.
I felt like I needed to be more active and give back.
I wanted to be in a career that I loved. Always learning, always following my goals.
I knew I wanted to help people and create lasting change.
I was looking for a way to connect with new people and make friends. Something fun and social.
Something that makes me a better person.
Something meaningful.
I've grown to know my neighbors.
And work with them to improve our community.
I'm becoming the impactful leader I want to be.
And through it all, I've had fun and met some of the best people.
I found connections, solved problems, and made a difference.
I've built a network, a community.
We took action. We joined Rotaract.
Good evening, everyone. Once again, welcome to the Rotary E-Club of 3310 panel discussion. For this month, we have a very interesting program. We talk about a new partnership, Rotary and Rotaract. Before we start, as I always would say, we talk about a disclaimer. And the caveat is this, that all of us are expressing our experiences, and these are our views and not necessarily that of Rotary International. My first guest, of course, I'd like to introduce is past Rotary International President Barry Ruskin, who is from the Rotary Club of East Nassau, Bahamas. Rassin earned his MBA in Health and Hospital Administration from the University of Florida, and is the first fellow of the American College of Healthcare Executive in the Bahamas. He's now a director of Doctors Hospital Health System and is a lifetime member of the American Hospital Association. At the Council of Legislation in 2019, past RI President Barry Rassin successfully proposed to elevate Rotaract from a Rotary program to equal partners in service. In addition, during the 2019 Hamburg Rotary Convention, Barry announced the Rotary Toastmasters Alliance to promote personal development of Rotaractors as well as Rotarians. There are a total of 8 modules, and some of these are now available in the Rotary Learning Center. Barry, would you like to say a few words?
It's a pleasure to be here with you. I thank you for inviting me. I know your audience is a lot of fantastic Rotarians and Rotaractors. So I look forward to having this conversation with you so we can really develop how we elevated Rotaract.
Thank you. The other 2 panelists are dual membership Rotarians and Rotaractors. This was approved in 2016 Council of Legislation. The first person I'd like to introduce from all the way from Sydney, Australia is Rebecca Fry. She has over a decade of experience in non-profit leadership and development, running leadership programs across Australia as well as New Zealand. She serves in a number of service roles, including Chair of the Rotaract Australia and sits on the Rotary International Strategic Planning Committee. Rebecca strongly believes in empowering people to create positive changes in the world, launching numerous initiatives in the pursuits, including RALA, OSHA, and recently chartering a new Rotary Club called the Rotary Social Impact Network. Professionally, Rebecca works in corporate strategy in a local government, where she brings her strategic expertise into driving positive outcomes for her local community. Rebecca, would you say a few words? Yeah.
Thank you. It's exciting to be here tonight to be discussing Elevate Rotaract and the opportunities that not just dual membership presents, but this new partnership with Rotary. It was exciting when the initiative was announced by past Rotary International President Barry, and I'm excited to share from a Rotaractor's perspective what this means for the Rotaract community and how Rotary can effectively engage with Rotaractors to leverage this as an opportunity. So it's lovely to be here, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Rebecca. The other panelist is Dennis Evanshang from the Rotaract Club of Chicago and Rotary One, which is actually the first Rotary Club in the world, called the Rotary Club of Chicago. He has been involved, his first involvement in Rotary was at the age of 15 when he actually joined RALA program, and then at the age of 18 he became a Rotaractor. During high school, Dennis was a Rotary Youth Exchange student to Brazil from October 2000 to 2008 to 2000 and July 2009. Currently, he is the membership chair of his Rotaract Club. He has served as vice president of the Rotaract Club of Chicago and has served various roles, including RALA chair, Rotary Youth Exchange Committee, and as well as the Rotary District 6450 Youth Service Chair. We got to know Dennis in 2019 when he came out to Singapore to be attached as a management intern with the United States Embassy. He served, when he was here for a 3-month period, he was appointed as the U.S. Embassy liaison officer, and his job was basically to make sure and to facilitate the arrival of Vice President Joe Biden. Currently, Dennis is a raw material buyer for Mars. Dennis?
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I am so proud to be part of the Rotary family and Rotaract family. Very excited to be back with all of you. It's great to see all my friends joining from Singapore and around the world. And I'm really excited to talk about Elevate Rotaract. It's something that's been a part of my life for a very long time. And I've had the opportunity to be in Rotaract in 3 different countries, so I can bring different perspectives from the different countries where Rotaract exists today.
Thank you, Dennis. Today is something special because I wanted to bring in a co-host. My co-host this evening is past President Cheng Kok Wing from my Rotary E-Club of 3310. Cheng Kok Wing has been a Rotarian for a long time now, and as well as a fellow Toastmasters. Cheng Kok Wing have served many positions in business, and the most important one I thought I wanted to introduce to you is that he was at one time, even before the Rotary Ambassador Scholars, he was a Rotary Colombo Plan Scholar, not a Rotary Colombo Plan Scholar, but just a Colombo Plan Scholar. Over to you, Kok Wing.
Hi, good morning, good evening. I'm very pleased to be here as the co-host, and in fact, in Singapore, we are already looking at how to make Rotary and Rotaract work together. There is a task force appointed, and right now I am part of that discussions, and also I'm actively involved with Rotary Learning Institute in Singapore, which I hope will also contribute to the professional development to the Rotaractors in the future.
Thank you. Barry, the Rotaract first started in, as far as Rotary International is concerned, back in 1968. And this was started by the Rotary Club of Charlotte North. Barry, would you be able to tell us what makes you want to move the Rotaract program from just a simple program to elevate into a new status with a new Rotary membership class? Can you give us the framework so that we will frame our panel discussion along that line? Thank you.
Happy to, BS. Thank you so much. It's really important to understand a little of that history. Where have we come from? And yes, Rotaract was a program of Rotary. And over those years since 1968, it grew pretty rapidly. I mean, we got to about 7,500 clubs, about 250,000 individuals doing good work. But the Rotary clubs were looking at Rotaract as a program and as something they should start and be involved in. And it was like they checked off the box, I've started a Rotaract club, and then they walked away. And so the Rotaractors didn't really feel a strong part of the organization. They didn't feel the respect that they really should have felt. And yet they were doing the good work of Rotary. They were doing service projects. They were raising funds. They were helping their communities. They were doing a lot of good things that Rotary clubs do. So why shouldn't we think about doing something different with Rotaract? Here we have 250,000 individuals, 250,000 people doing the work of Rotary, understanding Rotary, knowing how the organization works. And when they get to the age of 30, they left. They didn't stay with us. There was something wrong. What were we doing wrong? We had to figure that out. In order to really talk about that, we had to ask the Rotaractors. So we did. We asked Rotaract, why aren't you joining Rotary? And it was clear that we had a disconnect. So it was really important that we found the reasons for those disconnect and started to make a change so that Rotaractors felt more an integral part of our organization. Imagine if Rotaractors truly felt a better part of Rotary, which I think they're much better today than they used to be. But in feeling that way, then they're going to want to join a Rotary club when they're finished with Rotaract. That time is going to come, and they need to be very comfortable. And we're going to talk later about how to make that comfort. But we need to make sure they're comfortable in going to a Rotary club or starting their own Rotary club, but staying with the organization. Imagine what would happen to our membership if Rotaractors felt comfortable over the years of just transitioning from Rotaract to Rotary, but they didn't. And we need to fix that. So I felt it very important that we start to have that conversation and fundamentally change the organization so that our bylaws show the respect to our Rotaractors that they deserve for all the work that they do, that just like us. So we need to take that move and bring them into our organization in a stronger way, working closer with Rotaractors. They have a lot to bring to us as mentors. You know, we talk about those of us who are older, who we could share our experience and share our knowledge of Rotary and our communities. And we should be mentoring younger professionals, absolutely. But there's also where our younger professionals, our Rotaractors and others, can help us in Rotary to understand today's world. They have an understanding of today's world. They have a different philosophy of how the world works. They don't want to come to boring meetings, and that's part of why they didn't join Rotary clubs. They didn't want to spend a whole lot of money on administrative or on meals or that kind of thing. So that's another reason they didn't want to come. But you know, they want to change the world, and they want to do it quickly. You know, we have to deal with the patience that it takes to make changes like that. But no question, they wanted to do good things to make their communities better, to make the world better. And we weren't capturing them into our organization. They would do what they enjoyed with their Rotaractors, with their friends, and then what, less than 4% of them would join a Rotary club at the end of the day. That just wasn't good enough. So by stepping back and asking ourselves, what do we have to do to engage them to the point they have a passion to stay with the organization, that's when we could actually really work with Rotaract to be an integral part of Rotary. I mean, ask yourselves the question, what's the difference between a Rotaract club and a Rotary club? At the end of the day, they should be exactly the same as a Rotary club, having all the same privileges. The only difference is they're younger. Okay, they're young professionals. That's okay. That's really the only difference that we should have. So it took us a while to come up with how to do it. We had to go to the Council of Legislation, as you said, and we fortunately were able to get it passed as a fundamental change, not just as tweaking the program or showing them that we cared in small ways, but in a very major way. To change our bylaws and change our Constitution sends the message that Rotary International is serious. And I know we're going to talk about all the changes since then, but with that ability to be serious about the change for Rotaract, so they become a part of Rotary. We're all one. I want to start talking about Rotary as 1.4 million with 46,000 clubs around the world. Not just Rotary clubs, but Rotaract and Rotary clubs. That tells the world we are bigger, we are doing more. It helps our diversity because now we have that age difference integrated with Rotary clubs. So we accomplish so much by having them as a fundamental part of Rotary. So that's some of the reasons why. On top of that, it's a matter of it's fun to work with Rotaract. I love the dynamics of Rotaract clubs. They do things that others don't do. We've become a little stayed in our ways in too many Rotary clubs around the world. But Rotaractors have fun. When I met with Rotaract in Kenya, I'll never forget, they said, well, we're not going to meet with you in a conference room. We're going to take you on a walk through the Karura forest and tell you all about our beliefs and our what we think of Rotary, what we think of Rotaract, and what we're looking for the future. And that's exactly what they did, a fantastic opportunity to hear from young people. And it just cemented in my mind the need for us to appreciate, respect, and work with Rotaractors around the world. So those are some of the reasons why. And I know we're going to talk about what's happened since then, but we need to remind ourselves that this is an important change that every Rotary club around the world needs to embrace, needs to engage with Rotaractors and make them feel much more comfortable, much more respected in our amazing organization. So that's a pretty good summary of the why that we did what we did. Thank you, BS.
Thank you, Barry. I think you have said a nice framing, and the fact that Rotaractors are young and they're energetic and they need guidance and mentoring in order to be able to progress a little bit further. Without much ado, I'd like to call upon my co-host, Tsin Kok Wing, to take over from here so that I can also become part of the panelists as well. Tsin Kok Wing.
Thank you very much, CP Bansing. And also thank you very much, past RI President Barry, setting the stage and telling us sharing with us what are the reasons to have this elevation. And I would like to direct my next questions to Rebecca as well as Danny, since they are both Rotaractors and Rotarians. And what would be the kind of reactions from the Rotaract clubs with this development, the elevation? Are they very excited? Is there apprehensions? I think we'll start with Rebecca, lady first.
Cheers. So I would say that there was initial both excitement, but also uncertainty initially around what this change actually meant for Rotaract. We've dramatically seen this shifting to enhanced engagement with each announcement that's coming from Rotary International, be it access to further resources, which will enhance the effectiveness of their club management, to the launch of initiatives such as the Toastmasters training program, which is helping with individual membership engagement. So essentially, we're seeing both clubs and individuals starting to understand how they're able to leverage this new status, and seeing a fantastic positive swell as this continues. And I think we're seeing the elevation of conversations with sponsoring Rotary clubs and districts as well, as they really truly embrace the partnership element as well. And we're seeing great outcomes and visioning that's already coming out of that as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Rebecca. And Dennis, your turn.
Definitely. So I think from the perspective I have in many Rotaractors that I've connected with around the world, I would say there was really nothing to lose. It was only added benefits. So lots of positivity around all the added benefits that Rotaractors get with Elevate Rotaract. I will say, just one of the things that I've experienced is, as an example of one of the added benefits, was the Rotary magazine. So I remember a number of years ago when I was just a Rotaractor, and we had our club president featured in the Rotary magazine, which was an awesome thing. However, I didn't have access to the Rotary magazine. So I had to work my way through and try to get access, because I was very curious to see the article that they had put out. But there was no electronic access. We couldn't get a paper copy as Rotaractors, etc. So I think that's one small win for the many added benefits now that we have as this has been put in place this year.
Thank you, Dennis. And I'd like to direct my next questions to CP Chuban Singh. Ban Singh, I know in your days of youth, you had been involved in the Junior Chamber International, JCI, or the JCs. So could you share with us the similarities and the differences between JCI and the Rotaracts? And what lesson can we learn from JCI, or what lesson can JCI learn from Rotaract?
I think I talk from the perspective of when I was a JC member. And I think when I joined JCs, it was back in 1972 when I was only 23 years old. That time, Rotaract was non-existent in Singapore, at least. It started really in 1968. So the very real organization that I joined that was talking about youth development and doing community service at that time was the JCs. They never really got involved into the United Nations until 1981. So that's something later, much later, all right? And if we look at 1981, when they become involved with the United Nations, Rotaract and Rotary, Rotaract and the JCs would be, I would say, very, very similar in scope, especially now when we start to leave out the age limit for Rotaract. Because as a JCs, you start as a member from the age of 18 to the age of 14. In Rotaract, we start from the age of 18, used to be 30, but there's no upper limit. So I think in terms of activities and stuff like that, it's quite similar going forward. Back in 1970, in the early 70s, it's totally different world from the world that we are today, because we don't really talk about social media. Everything that we do was basically very much in terms of the hard copy. We wrote letters to get sponsorship. We get involved in the activities that really is physical. I think this is something that really have changed as far as the world today. And for the Rotaractors with the social media, the ability to go and do more things become even greater now. I'm not sure what's happening in the JCI's movement today, because JCI, if I look at in terms of number of membership, is about 180,000 thereabout, and the Rotaract movement is now about 280,000 worldwide. So there is actually a growth in Rotaract, whereas JCs have not really grown as fast as it should. That's basically, I just put the setting here.
Thank you very much, C.B. Bansing. And now let me change the scenario a little bit. Now, I think the relationship between Rotaract and Rotary has changed with this elevation. And for one thing, the Rotaract is no longer a program under Rotary, and we are equal partner now. So as a Rotary Club, it's not necessarily to be sponsored by a Rotary Club at all. So I'd like to direct these questions to past RI President Barry. Then how should this new relationship be? For instance, we have Rotary clubs now presently a sponsor of a Rotary club. Should that sponsorship change or remain? And how do you see the new clubs now coming up without sponsorship? And how can they be encouraged to make new clubs without the Rotary trying to sort of sponsor a club?
The first thing is the Rotary clubs need to change their mindset, those who haven't already, so that they appreciate that a Rotaract is our partner. It's not a program anymore, it's our partner. How do we treat partners in the Rotary world? We treat them as equals. We make them leaders. We work with them. We get to know them, and they get to know us. So a lot of it is about a different mindset and working with Rotaract clubs and Rotaractors so that they are treated as equals to Rotarians, just younger than us. And by doing that, then we put them as leaders in our Rotary Club committees. We put them as leaders in our district committees. And so we're treating them very differently in this new world as partners. If we just make that one fundamental change, then they appreciate it, they respect, they get to know us. And by creating those relationships with us and with Rotary clubs and their Rotary clubs, then they're going to work better with us. Sure, we could still, as a Rotary club, sponsor a Rotaract club, but now a Rotaract club can also sponsor another Rotaract club. So it doesn't have to be that kind of relationship. But sure, Rotary clubs should still continue to sponsor, but work with the clubs differently so that we show them that they are our partners.
Thank you. Thank you to past RI President Barry. Now I'd like to direct this same questions, but from a different perspective to Rebecca and Dennis. From the point of view of the Rotaract, now new clubs do not need a sponsor. But then when you do not need a sponsor, does it make it easier for new clubs to be formed or more difficult for new clubs to be formed? What are the pros and cons? And, for existing Rotary clubs, you lose a sponsor. So is there some disadvantage by losing a sponsor? Maybe Dennis can address this question first.
Sure. So I would say, overall, a sponsoring Rotary Club is important to really guide Rotaractors, especially Rotaractors that may not be as familiar with Rotary International as a whole and all of the nuances within Rotary. So I think from that perspective, it's still important to have that guidance from a club. But what I hear out of this is that it really allows for flexibility. So as an example, in our district, District 6450, we may have a great opportunity at a university that's in the middle of nowhere, as an example. And they may want to form a Rotaract club there, but there might not be a Rotary club in that town or within so many, a certain distance of that area. So there may be an initiative at the district level that they can start a Rotaract club there, but there's not necessarily a Rotary club to sponsor it. So I think it allows for the flexibility, but I also think it doesn't say that there can't be a sponsoring Rotary club per se. And if a club wants to if a Rotary Club wants to mentor that Rotaract club, there's certainly opportunity to do that.
Thank you, Dennis. Then let me put the same questions to Rebecca.
Cheers. So building on what Dennis has said and actually touching on an important part that Barry raised earlier, previously we were seeing Rotary clubs that were, or some Rotary clubs that were starting Rotaract clubs, but weren't actually kind of following through on the partnership element and the mentoring element of continuing the relationship with that Rotaract club. So from my perspective, the value that you can get from partnering with Rotary and Rotaract, so that sponsorship element, is invaluable, but it needs to be a sustainable partnership rather than a sponsorship just to get started as such. So part of that is then ensuring that there's dialogue to ensure that the partnership is sustainable, that the Rotary Club is getting from the Rotaract Club what they're looking for, that the Rotaract Club is getting the sponsorship and the support they want as well. And if that sustainable partnership isn't evident, well, that's then where the flexibility to start a Rotaract club without a sponsoring Rotary Club actually exists. And I think that there's an excellent point that's been raised as well around, if you don't have a sponsoring Rotary Club, it's really important to ensure that you're engaging either at the district level or with other Rotary clubs to ensure that you're an integrated part of the Rotary family, because that's part of a huge benefit of our organisation, is that integrated element beyond the club experience.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. And let me turn to CP Chuban Singh. You have been a Rotarian for over 30 years, so you know almost everything, especially in District 3310. And from the perspective of the District 3310, what do you see? Because I guess traditionally is always a Rotary Club trying to form a Rotaract club. And now that there is no necessity, will there be more likely to have more Rotaract clubs, or without the Rotary actively trying to help the Rotaract clubs, and then we are less likely to have Rotaract clubs? CP Bansing.
Okay, you're asking from the perspective of a Rotaract club, all right, rather than from Rotary. From a perspective of the Rotaract club, I believe that the way forward is really for Rotaractors to learn to become more independent. I think it's the way going forward. If I look back at what I was as a JC, we were all independent. We never had a sponsor club, as what you would call it. And from there, we grew up and continue to grow. What actually happens is within the club itself, the JCs, we have actually people who are more senior. I give you an example. In the year 1973, I was made the chairman of the Infant and Child Care Exhibition. And I had to run an exhibition at that time, the most famous place called the Victoria Memorial Hall. And it was for a 3-day, 2-night event. And this starts from the morning right into the evening. And what do I have to do? When I was asked to take over the job, I was a little bit hesitant, like most Rotaractors will be at the age of 23, because it's a big task to run an event 3-day, 2-night at a very big exhibition hall. But I had somebody who says he will mentor me. And he says that, look, you just take the job and I'll guide you along. And of course, when he said that, I said, okay, I will take the job. And what happens was that I went from stage to stage, negotiating with sponsors, negotiating with venues, getting programs, getting doctors, getting nurses, getting mothers, and stuff like that. However, the mentoring program during the old days was like learning how to do Kung Fu. The Kung Fu master will teach you, Kung Fu. But before you learn how to do Kung Fu, he says, please carry this pail of water up and down the steps so many times and you do this for the next 6 months. For the next 6 months, you really didn't learn anything because all you did was carrying water. And you ask yourself the question, what am I doing? So this is exactly the problem with this. I went through the process going from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I couldn't see the end of the picture. And most of the time, after hitting a hurdle, I wanted to give up. This is what happens when all of us do not know what's the end in sight. And so today's mentoring program should be different. And if I do the mentoring program, I will always begin with the end in sight. And will ask you to see how you see the end. And then we can work from the end backwards down to the very beginning. So my answer to that is, as Rebecca says, and a lot of us basically agree, you need to have a good mentoring program. You need to have a good mentor to start. But I want to say that Rotaractors must learn to be independent, to learn how to be self-sufficient, rather than always say, if I need money, can I go to my sponsor club and ask for money? I think the way forward here is for us as Rotarians, helping the Rotaractors is to help them to see how we can make things work and to work together so that money can be raised. So over to you, Corwin.
Bouncing. And let me try to put things in perspective. So with this elevation, basically, we expect the Rotaract to grow the Rotaract without too much help from the Rotary. And I guess we expect the Rotary to attract the Rotaract. So to bring them into Rotary and not to lose them. So I want to direct these questions to past RI President Barry. Then what here, some ideas you have, you can suggest to, I think the Rotaract, how they can grow Rotaract, and to the Rotary, how you can draw the Rotaract to become Rotarian.
It's really important that we think differently, as I said earlier. Rotary clubs need to ask themselves, they kind of need to step back from the club and ask themselves if the way they run their club, the things they do are relevant for today's world, relevant for younger professionals. So that's one thing. Ask yourselves what you're doing to encourage younger people to be a part of your club. As a Rotary club, we should be visiting the Rotaract Club on a regular basis so we get to know them. Life is all about relationships. We need those relationships with our partners. So we need to go to the Rotaract clubs and we need to engage Rotaract to come to the Rotary clubs. In my Rotary club, when a Rotaractor comes, they don't sign in as a guest. They sign in as a member. Not that they're a member of our club, but that's how close our partnership is. Don't treat them like outsiders. Treat them like partners, and that'll make a big difference. On our club committees, put the Rotaractors on the committees. Do joint fundraisers with the Rotaractors. So as CB Van Singh said, we need to be mentoring them, but allowing them to mentor us as well. So don't just give them work to do, but bring them as leaders, as partners, co-chair of a committee, and that kind of thing, so that we elevate their status and the perception of other Rotarians as to the importance and the equality of our Rotaract partners.
Okay, as a follow-up, past RI President Barry, do you see this visiting Rotaract clubs or engaging Rotaract clubs being set as goals for Rotary clubs? For instance, the citation, would that become the future requirements for the Rotary clubs? Absolutely.
Rotary clubs should continue to sponsor Rotaract clubs. They should be required to visit Rotaract clubs. They should be required to encourage the Rotaractors to visit their clubs. So it's really very important that we make that happen. And one way in the Rotary world to make things happen is to set a goal. So if you set a goal in a Rotary club It's amazing. We accomplish any goal we ever set. In fact, we always overshoot our goals, which is amazing. That's part of the success of our organization. So set goals in the Rotary Club to do all these things with our partners in Rotaract, and I guarantee you we'll not only make those goals, we'll surpass them, we'll grow Rotaract, Rotaract will join us, and our membership will go to 2 million.
Thank you very much, Barry. Now let me turn to Rebecca and Dennis. So from the perspective of the Rotaract, and what do you see? What do you have as ideas you would like to suggest to Rotaract clubs to be engaged, or even to actively engage the Rotary clubs? What suggestions do you have? Well, I think I'll start with Rebecca.
Thank you. So I think the key here, and Barry touched on this, it's all about relationships. And so in terms of building strong relationships, the key is just starting a conversation with each other. Jump in the same room and ask each other what you want so that you can get to understand each other better. Share your plans for the Rotary year and actively understand your Rotaract Club's plans. Or if you're a Rotaractor who's listening to this, actively understand what your Rotary Club plans are and understand the overlap and opportunities where you can more strongly partner as well. Understand what does success look like for both parties. And in terms of developing a sustainable partnership, it would be amazing to actually run a dual club visioning session where you're essentially asking everyone in the room, you know, what do you want this partnership to look like, not just for the next Rotary year, but in 3 or 5 years' time. And so by understanding that longer term vision and setting a 5-year goal, that's what will then enable us to take essentially steps towards that as well. And once you've made a plan and you agree on the plan, you know, write the plan down and set up time to review it as well, because one of the things that happens when we develop these strategies is that they look fantastic and then sometimes we forget to come back to them. So having that time to set the time to come back and revisit it, understand what's working and what needs to change as well, will enable that ongoing development throughout the partnership beyond the current Rotary and Rotaract board and leaders. So it's actually an ongoing progression that's bigger than the leaders who are at the helm today.
Thank you, Rebecca. Now, Dennis, what suggestions do you have?
Yeah, so I would say one of the things that's very important is having a Rotary mom. And I say that and because of my experience in District 6450. So shout out to my Rotary mom, Linda Yates, who has helped guide me through Rotary and multiple programs and multiple years of Rotary and Rotaract and RILA and Youth Exchange. To me, you know, really having the full understanding of the Rotary programs, she's helped me tremendously navigate through things, and she's very knowledgeable about Rotary. So I think, you know, having that Rotary mom is important. I also would say my district believed in me at a very young age, prior to Elevate Rotaract actually, and they selected me to be the district chair for youth service. And I'm not sure if that was completely allowed at that time, but they made it happen because they saw something in me and they saw something in Rotaractors. And so, you know, now especially with it being, you know, really encouraged, I would recommend get people involved in all different levels of committees at the district level and RI level as well. And then it's all about extending the invite and understanding people's perspective. Because for me, when I was growing up in Chicago, and I was 18 years old in the Rotaract Club of Chicago, and even when I was younger in other Rotary programs, people didn't always understand. And when I say people, I'm referring to Rotarians in the district. didn't always understand my limitations or what I could accomplish. And a lot of it was around either my schedule, my finances, or the simple fact of getting somewhere. I didn't own a car. And so there were times where I would get invited to a Rotary Club quite far out in the suburbs, and I couldn't get there by public transportation. So there were key Rotarians that made sure I had a ride if I needed a ride. Or they invited me, but understood that my schedule may not work with the schedule of the Rotary Club. Just kind of reflecting back on my experience with the Rotary Club of Chicago, it meets during lunchtime. And with my profession, it's impossible to get away for an hour and a half during lunchtime. So they've created evening events and different things in the evenings that I am able to attend, which is a great opportunity. I would also say on the financial side of it, since I joined the Rotaract Club of Chicago at 18, I was still in school and had financial challenges that I needed to overcome. So another, a $40, $50 meal was not always going to be possible. And it's a very uncomfortable conversation to have when you have to share that that's the barrier of why you can't go to a meeting or go to an event. And sometimes the cost may be even more. So having those open conversations is important.
Thank you very much, Dennis. As a follow-up question, I guess the RI goal is for the transition of Rotaractors to Rotary, increase the percentage. Now it's 4%, and we're looking at 20. And both of you, Rebecca and Dennis, you are dual member. So what do you see your role as a dual member, to help materialize that final goal of 20% transition rate? How can you help?
So initially when I joined Rotary, I joined the Rotary E-Club of Silicon Valley, and that provided me with an opportunity to really understand what I guess I was able to understand what Rotary, could be beyond a traditional club as well. And the amazing thing that I learned in engaging with other Rotaractors, particularly in Australia, was it wasn't that they didn't want to join Rotary or that they weren't engaged in Rotary. It was that they were struggling to find a Rotary club that actually met their needs. And that became the inspiration or the catalyst for me to then charter the Rotary Social Impact Network, which is a Rotary club that we essentially targeted at Rotaract and Rotary alumni, and we have 31 members chartered, and of those members, 97% are Rotary alumni and 87% are current or past Rotaractors. So in understanding in being able to successfully transition myself, that helped me when there's a saying, you can't be what you can't see. And so by people then having seen, I guess, me successfully transition into the organization, I was actually able to help a whole host of other people successfully transition from Rotaract to Rotary as well. And we kind of have a responsibility to help as many Rotaractors do that as possible.
To you, Dennis.
So I would absolutely echo what Rebecca said. It's about finding that right opportunity. It truly is, and really thinking through, at the district level, where's the opportunity? Because I can certainly say that, we meet in the evenings in my Rotaract club, and there weren't always options in all the regions to meet in the evenings. So having that flexibility is key, and I think unfortunately, a lot of these different pilot programs where there were satellite clubs and different things that were formed came a little late in the Rotary timeline, and so it's unfortunate where we're at. But I do think with the increased flexibility, we're going to see more people, go from Rotaract to Rotary, I also believe that if you have a cohort of individuals that do it together and make the transition together, it helps tremendously.
Okay, at this point, I'd like to ask Clarence whether there are any questions coming from our audience. Has there been questions from the audience to the panelists this evening? Oh, there's a question for Rebecca. Let me read. What do you think needs to change in Australia for this to be effective? From Rotarian. So, Sim, Rebecca?
Okay, so I hope that I can interpret the context effectively. So a lot of the Rotary clubs in Australia are facing similar challenges to the rest of the Western world. The demographic is aging in terms of the Rotarians, and a lot of Rotarians are really happy with their Rotary clubs, and I think it's important for us to acknowledge that that's okay. And where we're seeing growth in districts across Australia is where new clubs are starting. So rather than creating a compromised environment where we're taking away from the existing experience that many Rotarians are enjoying, and potentially similarly not creating enough change to engage young people, it's actually looking at an and conversation where we're adding satellite clubs or adding other ways for young people to get involved and add to the current traditional experience, rather than asking the traditional clubs to compromise on their Rotary experience. So yeah, I'm a huge advocate for starting new clubs and utilising different club models as well, be it passport clubs, online clubs, whatever sort of hybrid club you want to create.
Thank you, Rebecca. There's another question. Oh, hello, Dennis. We met when we were in Singapore. Who was that? That's not much of a question. Clarence, any more questions from our audience?
Why don't I ask a question to Dennis in that case as a follow-up?
Yeah.
Dennis, we met in Singapore too, right?
Yeah.
Can you tell us your experiences moving around District 3310, especially Singapore, with the Rotarians as well as the Rotaractors? What was your takeaway? Were they cohesive enough, or would there be rooms for improvement?
That's a good question. So at that time, I was a Rotaractor only. And so I think it really gave me different perspectives on Singapore and on Rotary and Rotaract, being involved with both groups of individuals. I do think there's improvement for, from that time for the connections to happen and really involve both parties. I don't recall when I was in Singapore any times where there was a joint event, and I think they're really powerful events when they're joint events. One of the comments that I always get as feedback with our Rotary Club is around hosting fun social events. And they always tell us, as Rotaractors, they tell us, you guys just do it better. And we want to be part of your social events. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there to do joint events, whether it be a fundraiser, social event, and whatnot.
Thank you, Dennis. I think we are just about 8 minutes to the hour. And I'd like to ask all the panelists to say their last words for about a minute. Perhaps we can start with Rebecca.
Thank you. So I think one of the things that's most important is being present with each other. Hollywood director Woody Allen has a great quote, which is 80% of success is showing up. And I think if, as Rotaractors, we show up to Rotary and our Rotary clubs, and as Rotarians, we show up to our Rotaract clubs, that's a lot of what will then facilitate strong relationships across the board and enable those conversations to continue and for further collaboration to be embraced. And from that, hopefully we then continue to see this ongoing development of the Rotaract Rotary partnership, so that we can ensure that Rotary is successful and sustainable and lasts for many years to come beyond all of us here today. So yeah, my words are be present.
Thank you, Rebecca. To you, Dennis.
Sure. So, you know, for me, I think the one point I would like you to take away is that the Rotary and Rotaract partnership is a two-way street, and it's about the mentorship, like Barry had mentioned, and it's going both ways. So maybe there's something where a Rotaractor excels in one area and a Rotarian excels in another, and bringing those two together to have a mutual partnership. So always think about where can you be the mentor or the mentee, and who you can partner with in Rotary or Rotaract.
Thank you, Dennis. CB Bansing.
If I were to say one word and I would talk around it, it would be flexibility. Flexibility. We shouldn't be confined to anything as long as we play within the rules. Everything is possible. We shouldn't treat the Rotaractors as kids. We shouldn't, but we should treat them like brothers, younger brothers, that we could actually exchange stuff and learn from each other. That's the process. And the most important thing is you cannot do this, you cannot do that. That should be abolished. And it says, okay, if we can do something, how can we do it? If there are constraints, how could we do it differently? Once you begin to explore the possibilities, then the world is your oysters. And I believe that then both will grow together. Rotarians and Rotaractors will grow, and they will be able to integrate as one, and eventually you will have more Rotarians and Rotaractors becoming Rotarians. Thank you.
Thank you, CB Bansing. And past RI President Barry, you have the last word.
For having this conversation. It's so important that around the world, we talk about this so that we really can understand. Rebecca started off talking about how in the beginning it was, well, what does this really mean? Should we be concerned? So let's have these conversations everywhere. I admire and congratulate you for doing that. But there's two things I'd like to ask our audience to remember. One is what was just said, flexibility is so important. We need to be flexible with what we do with Rotaract. Dennis talked about his example of how flexible his Rotary Club was. That's what we need to be thinking of. So flexibility is important, not only with Rotaract, but everything we do. What is good for the club to do more service for our communities? Let's be flexible enough to accomplish that with Rotaract as well. The other I'd like to leave us with is the fact that the Rotary Club and the Rotaract Club both have responsibilities in this relationship. This isn't a one-sided way to go. This is a two-way responsibility. We've talked a lot about what Rotary clubs need to do and be different and partnerships, but Rotaractors need to step up as well. We've changed a lot of the rules, and so that Rotaract can do all that Rotary does. So they need to get qualified to do global grants. They need to be qualified so they could receive the awards that the foundation now has allowed them to be eligible for as equals to Rotary. So both of us, both sets of clubs have responsibilities. Let's all step up. Let's all make our organization continue to be the #1 humanitarian organization in the world. We're changing the world. Now we could do it with another 250,000 people. Imagine how much more we could do. So thank you all for listening. Thank you all for having this conversation.
Absolutely. Now I pass the control to the host, CP Bansing, to close the session.
Thank you very much. Would you like to have your famous last word, Mr. Chen Kok-Wing?
I don't. I guess it's very important in engagement is everything. So I might even consider, for instance, pairing Rotarians and the Rotaractors in a kind of a mentor-mentee relationship as an ongoing initiative, right? So to get the Rotarians and the Rotaractors to get to know each other much better, work together much better. And that way, probably, would encourage the Rotaractors to transition into the Rotarians.
Thank you, Chen Kok-Wing. This is the first of 2 series. Today, we talk about a new partnership, which is basically about a marriage between Rotaractors and Rotary. The next series that we talk about is really to talk about working together. Marriage is one thing. Working together in a marriage is another thing. So the next session will be on the 21st of August, and we will have 2 past district governor Henry Tan, as well as 2 other panelists. One of them is a Rotaractor district Rotaract representative in Chiu, Taiwan, and the other one is a dual member, a Rotarian as well as a Rotaractor from Taiwan. She's Elsie Lin, and
yes.
I think you're going to be enjoying her session as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, until we meet again in August, thank you for coming, and do share this video with your friends and ask them to go and look at it if possible, especially the Rotaractors. Thank you.
Stay tuned, and see you again next month.
Bye-bye.